You are listening to the Ranch Hand Podcast. Yeah, last time I did this, it was like an awkward 4 minutes because he couldn't hear me, and then I went back and I was editing the video. The first 4 minutes, like he would say something, and you could hear him. You just couldn't. My output for some reason was being dumb,
Oh, that's weird.
but it was funny. But it worked out. I figured it out. So now I feel like I have to check every time. But
Yeah,
uh, how you been?
been pretty good. Just really busy with graduate school at the moment. There's kind of a lot of sampling stuff that I have to get done right now. I have to have all my data in hand by the end of the semesters that over the summer I can hopefully write my thesis and be done by August. So
Oh, so you're close. I didn't realize how close you were.
I'm getting close, but I think close just means I have a lot of work to do in the next couple months.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, what does the data collecting look like? What does that entail?
So for most of my graduate degree, it's been get out on a boat, and I'm basically using like a scientific grade fish finder to collect data. So I'm basically just driving around the lake on the trolling motor, like 3.5 miles an hour, and just kind of watching a computer
Yeah.
collect what essentially you see on a fish finder.
Oh,
Uh,
is it
so
like I guess then is it collecting like numbers basically of the amount of fish that are around you?
yeah, I mean,
Or I guess
really, I'm getting the raw data of how loud the echoes are, but with it being scientific grade, I have a lot of control over how many pings per second it's sending out, how many noises it's making, um,
uh-huh.
as well as like I can calibrate it so that I have a very kind of precise estimate of um, kind of how strong a return is, and I have that kind of truth where across lakes, across seasons,
Hmm.
I kind of have a known baseline to track that on. So
Gotcha. Very nice. Well, so I know originally when you were going down this path, you were actually going to be an engineer, right?
yeah, when I first got to BYU, start my college education, mechanical engineering was the plan. And so my first 2 semesters, I think through the summer after my first year, I was doing physics, I was doing calculus, I was doing a course called statics, which is you're looking at like the structural members of like bridges and stuff. And decided that that kind of career field wasn't for me because I didn't want to end up stuck in an office
Yeah.
every day for at all times, basically. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was at that point that I just kind of switched and found the wildlife and wildlands conservation program at BYU and decided to kind of pursue that and found a passion there to um, just in the learning that you're getting to learn about natural systems, about all the natural processes, kind of taking the biology you had taken in high school and taking it another step further into the kind of advanced scientific side of that.
Okay. I didn't realize it was that quickly. Like you just, so you literally went from engineering and then you found the conservation and you're like, oh, well, we'll see where this leads, I guess, type thing.
Pretty much. So yeah,
So
my
that's,
first year to switch, it was like a plants in the environment course, I think was my first class within kind of the wildlife and wildlands field. Um, and the professor for it was great, which probably helped, but it was just an interesting class. And it was kind of after that that it was like, yeah, I think this is the place for me, and continued through to take all the rest of the courses I needed.
okay. Gotcha. So how long is that program? Like undergrad, I guess, part of it.
I don't remember how many credit hours it is specifically. It's not a super long course at BYU, like course of study.
Okay.
Um, I mean, I was able to finish my whole degree within 4 years,
Okay.
including starting doing mechanical engineering at the beginning. So I basically completed all the requirements for wildlife and wildlands conservation within 3 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what was your class load like? I guess on average, what was the amount of credits you were taking for that?
Because I had started in the wrong place, I was taking a pretty heavy course load. I think at least three of my semesters, I was like 17 to
Oh,
18
okay.
credit hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was taking a pretty heavy course load to get it done in 3 years, but was able to do it. So
Yeah, so I guess it worked out. Um, okay, then where did you meet Kayla in that process? I actually don't know if I know this whole story, so
yeah. So I met Kayla. So it would have been fall of 2020 because we had just started band after kind of COVID had been
mhm.
gone. I actually wasn't going to get to do marching band that year because one of the courses I had to take during my junior year required me to be in class either Tuesday or Thursday during the marching
Um,
practice time. But because it was COVID, it was moved to online, and I would just ask the professor, like, "Hey, can I just watch this later?" And he was
mm,
like, "Yeah, that's fine." So was able to do marching band that fall of 2020, and it was that year that Kayla had just gotten back from her mission in like February or March. Um, and so met her that fall in marching band, and that was the initial point we started dating.
okay.
All
And then the rest is history,
the
obviously.
rest is history.
Well, right on. Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you guys actually met through marching band, so that's good to know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
okay, so then after you finished your degree or during your degree while you're doing your undergrad for conservation, did you have to do like an internship at all or like what was that kind of was there anything like that that happened?
Yeah, there wasn't any required internships, but they basically don't offer any coursework during the summer for wildlife and wildlands conservation because the expectation is that you go out and you get a job
Hmm.
working for a state agency, for federal government, for someone kind of working in the wildlife field. And so, let me see, I think between yeah, I think it was between sophomore and junior year, I went to Flaming Gorge working for Utah Division of Wildlife as an aquatic invasive species technician.
Okay.
So I was basically at the boat ramp at Flaming Gorge Reservoir, and any boats that would come in, I had some questions I had to ask them. I had to kind of look over their boat and make sure they didn't have invasive mussels, quagga and zebra mussels on them. Make sure they hadn't been anywhere that had them,
Okay.
and just basically trying to help make sure that those very damaging invasive species didn't get into Flaming Gorge. A lot of the western states do a lot of work to try and prevent movement of those invasive species around. So that's what I did that first summer. Um, and then between my junior and senior year, I was actually working for a research lab within BYU
Hmm.
in their system there. And so I spent that summer out in the field doing a lot of rangeland research. We were
Okay.
using kind of these novel seed coating technologies where we'd take seeds for wheatgrass or all sorts of native species that we had seed for that either Utah Division of Wildlife or a big part of our research was in cooperation with the Rio Tinto Kennecott copper mine.
Hmm.
So we were trying to help these native plants better establish so that Rio Tinto could kind of make their slopes more natural instead of just being an ugly eyesore off of the Salt Lake Valley. Um, a lot of that interest is for wildlife and
Hmm.
even for other grazing for cattle and stuff to put better, more palatable species back out on the range to just kind of improve that. So that's why I spent the that summer doing, and then after graduation is kind of when I started into fisheries.
Okay, so the majority of, I guess at the beginning, the majority of it was more land conservation and stuff. And so after you graduated, then you kind of, this is when you transition more into the like fishing, fisher, whatever,
Yeah,
hatchery, whatever stuff.
yeah. BYU didn't have, especially I guess within wildlife and wildlands conservation, didn't have a lot of fisheries focused stuff.
Okay.
The main kind of fish focused projects at BYU were within the biology department.
Hmm.
So yeah, it wasn't really till after graduation that I both kind of figured out that fisheries was the path that I wanted to go down and started doing some more jobs that were connected to that.
Okay. I forgot to ask, what is like your major? Like, what is it called? Is it
So at Oklahoma State, where I'm at right now, um, it's long, but I'm within it's the Natural Resource Ecology and Management program, and I have
okay?
an emphasis in fisheries and aquatic ecology.
Okay. And then your undergrad, was it just like biology or what was your undergrad?
Yeah, wildlife and wildlands conservation is my undergrad.
Oh,
So,
okay. Gotcha. Okay. So where was the first like fishing job that you had?
mhm. So Flaming Gorge is, I guess, the first kind of fisheries one, sitting on the
Okay.
boat and stuff. But right after I graduated, I got another job with Utah Division of Wildlife, and that was at Strawberry Reservoir, and I was a fisheries technician. So for that, I was helping net fish, run the fish trap, and monitor spawning runs up the river.
Hmm.
I mean, maintaining boats, talking to fishermen, getting data on what people were catching, what those catch rates were, and just all sorts of stuff with that. So I was just kind of at the, I don't know, helping the biologists do whatever they needed done. So I got to do a wide range of stuff in that job.
Okay. What would a day to day on average look like in that job?
So we worked 4 10-hour days in that job
Okay.
instead of 5 8s. Just
Hmm.
kind of worked better for the biologist schedules, but we'd start work at like 6:30 in the morning. Um, Depending on the season, that was either tasks just kind of right around our buildings there. So that might have been repairing gill nets that had been torn by fish or by boat props, doing maintenance on our boats or trailers. So repairing, I guess, doing oil changes in the motors. We had at some point we had to pull the tank out of one of our boats and try to repair the fuel tank because we were getting water into the system. Repacking bearings on trailers, all sorts of kind of that maintenance stuff. Um, and during one of the seasons, the morning work was a lot of times we had to go to the fish trap that was right by our house and the storage shed there.
Hmm.
And we had fish that would come into the fish trap at night, and we had to go capture the fish, measure them, get lengths, count how many males and females we had of the spawning salmon, and then sort them out into the raceways so that they could marinate a little bit longer, and then we could strip eggs and sperm from those fish to send to the hatcheries to put salmon back into both that reservoir and other reservoirs around the state.
Oh,
And then, yeah, all through the afternoon, it was kind of whatever else we needed to get done. So, kind of spring and fall, that was going out and setting gill nets, pulling fish out of the nets, counting those, measuring those. A couple times we would have to drive to different fish hatcheries to mark fish or to get samples of fish that we kind of knew what was going to be put into Strawberry Reservoir. We did some just like trapping and stuff because the salmon needed to move up and around the rivers. We had to keep beaver dams from being built.
mhm.
So we trapped quite a few beavers over that, what was that, 5 or I guess 6 or 7 month span, just to try and keep the rivers clear so the fish can move. I mean, we'd have to take a shotgun out, and we had these shotgun shells that would fire a firecracker that we could like lob out 100 yards or something. We'd use that to scare pelicans off of the river mouths so that they wouldn't eat all the fish that we were trying to get into the rivers to spawn. So just a lot of different activities that we're trying to support the fishery and make it as good as possible for the fishermen there.
Yeah, that's that's quite a plethora of activities that you're having to do. You're a mechanic basically, and then you're also like getting to shoot shotguns at birds. That sounds like a great time on a boat.
Uh,
You also mentioned how many biologists did you work with? He said biologists. So how
so
many?
yeah, so Strawberry Reservoir, because of how important it is to Utah, it's I think the highest number of angler hours of any body of water in the state.
Oh wow, I didn't know
Um,
that.
And because it's so important, it has a project leader and a biologist, and both basically are functionally biologists dedicated to Strawberry Reservoir. They don't have to worry about any of the other lakes and stuff in the area.
Okay,
And then there are two fisheries technicians under them.
okay, interesting. Um, and then how many species of fish are there in, let's just say, the one you spent the most time in?
Yeah. So Strawberry Reservoir is fairly straightforward. As far as game fish, there are cutthroat trout that are the Bear Lake strain of Bonneville cutthroat trout.
Okay.
They have kokanee salmon that they put in there that people really like going after. And then rainbow trout are kind of, I think those are the primary three fish that people will go after in Strawberry.
Hmm.
We also have Utah suckers and Utah chub in there, but those are basically just kind of what people would consider trash fish. No one really goes and targets those, but the young of those fish are the ones that the cutthroat trout will eat, and they have the cutthroat trout in there to kind of keep the populations of chub and sucker in check so that they don't take over because they've done that in the past.
Okay. Interesting. Um, so since you had all this insider information, did you have a lot of luck fishing if you went?
I, I had a decent amount of luck there because it's, I don't know, such a well-known fishery. There's a lot of information even just online. So,
Oh,
in
okay.
addition to, I mean, yeah, being in contact with the biologists helped some of like initially kind of learning strawberry, but you could go pretty much anywhere on the lake. And if you threw on a white tube jig and just started casting that around,
Hmm.
you're probably going to catch fish doing that. I think the big learning curve there for me was learning how to catch the salmon because that was a whole different type of fishing than I'd ever done before. Um, and so I had to learn from both the biologists and from other anglers there kind of how to do that.
What was different about it?
So going after the salmon is almost exclusively a trolling thing out in the open water. You're not
Okay.
going to go throw bait off the bank or something and catch salmon generally. So if I was had the chance to be on a boat, we were running a downrigger with as heavy a balls could be managed on that downrigger. And then they had these little like squids, they were called. So just these little lures with a couple hooks on them, and you'd put a couple pieces of corn on that and troll around the reservoir until something hit it. Salmon are, well, those kokanee salmon are interesting because they're not necessarily going after the lure because they want to eat it because that's their normal food source. They go at it. I mean, I don't know that anyone knows for sure, but it's somewhat of like a territorial response
Hmm.
because those kokanee salmon, their primary food source is zooplankton. So just the little tiny organisms in the water. They're not generally eating other fish or anything. So you
Well,
have to get them mad enough at something to hit, and then you can catch them with that.
yeah, so I guess you're just literally going back and forth in between their territory, hoping you piss them off enough that they'll attack it.
Yeah, you're just running around open water part of the lake, maybe using your electronics to see a school of fish and try to hit that a couple times if you can find it. But it's a lot of just kind of sitting on a boat, or for me, um, pedaling around the lake on a kayak and just hoping something happens.
That's funny. I didn't realize that. That's interesting though. Um, okay. So you spent a few months there? Was it just after grad school or after
Yeah.
your bachelor's? You spent
Yeah.
just like a few
After
months
my
there?
undergrad, I think I graduated in April with my undergrad and started that job at the beginning of May.
Yeah.
And that went through the end of October, I think, was the season for that job since it was just a temporary position.
Yeah. Snow ruins it.
Yeah, they don't need the extra help once the snow kind of sets in and they, I think, transition to a lot more office work. They're not
Hmm.
up at the reservoir as much. Um, they do come up, but the biologists are the ones then that are talking to fishermen.
Hmm.
They have a couple snowmobiles, so they'll run around the lake once it freezes and talk to anglers out ice fishing. They'll do some sampling under the ice, but the biologists just take care of that part themselves.
Yeah. So then what did you do after that? What was the next?
So I did a short stint at Action Targets just as a manufacturing temporary job to kind of hold me over till I could. I was trying to get into grad school this
Okay.
time. But yeah, I just took a temporary position. And then in January, actually, a biologist that I had met doing the work at Strawberry Reservoir called me up and offered me a job as a creel clerk,
Okay.
which basically you have some body of water or something that you're interested in, and you're going and talking to fishermen. You're counting how many fishermen are on the water, which all of it kind of helps you secure more funding. If your river, your lake, or something has more fishermen on it, then more money will get allocated to that body of water since it's a more important fishery. So I was doing that on the lower Provo River, just
Okay.
right there off of Orem, Provo area. Uh,
Hmm.
I would spend 13 hours a day just driving a 9 mile stretch of river, counting fishermen, talking to as many fishermen as I could. We had specific interview questions that we would ask them. Um, and we are just trying to get as much data on kind of what people were catching, how much of that they were catching. So I was trying to figure out what the catch rates were for brown trout, rainbow trout, mountain whitefish. I think I ran into one person the whole 6 months that I was doing this survey that had caught a cutthroat trout on the lower Provo,
Hmm.
and then just basic information on kind of what type of fly they were using or what lures they were using, basically just to like nymph or dry fly type of specificity. And so yeah, I spent a lot of time talking to the guides too, and just getting some sort of relationship with them to they were always happy if I showed up and I could ask the guy, be like, hey, can I talk to your client? They'd be like, yeah, no problem.
That's funny. Well, I guess you know that stretch of 9 miles really well.
I've spent a lot of time on it. It was amazing because I think I would drive about 120 miles a day on that 9 mile stretch of
Oh
it.
my gosh. Oh, that's so much driving on just 9 miles.
Yeah, if I was just, and it was cool. I got to just be outside and
Yeah.
um, have a lot of interaction with the fishermen, which is always fun. And um, just trying to be that connection, I guess, between the Division of Wildlife and the fishermen that are kind of who a lot of that work is done for. So
Hmm.
trying to find out what their needs are, what um, they might need done on the river that would make it a better experience for them.
Oh, that's interesting. I actually hadn't really ever thought about that, all that stuff. So you were applying, how many grads, I guess how many grad programs are there in the country? Do you know?
I don't know the specific number. I don't know if most schools is the right. I think probably most colleges have some sort of
Okay.
graduate education in like a wildlife type field. Um, you definitely get different qualities of education or different focuses depending on where you go to.
Hmm.
So, like Montana State's going to have a lot of work around Yellowstone National Park and has a lot of grants and stuff in association with that.
Hmm.
A lot of universities will have a cooperative fish and wildlife management kind of unit where the state game agency and the university or another agency and the university have an agreement and um, So, like, for example, Oklahoma State um, here has an agreement with Oklahoma Department of Wildlife and Conservation. And so basically any research projects that they're doing are going to be done through Oklahoma State.
Okay.
And so, and then there's other research projects that will be done, but a lot of universities have different graduate educations, and you just kind of have to pick the university that aligns with your interests. And for me, somewhat too, of just where can you get an offer?
Okay. Is
Because
Oklahoma where you got the offer, or did you have some options?
Oklahoma State was the only place I got
Okay.
an interview
Oh,
and offered the position. So I kind of took it because it was a decent like interest for me. Oklahoma State's a decent university to go to because I mean a lot of the ag schools for each state have a pretty good wildlife program because
yeah.
it's kind of a direct correlation with whatever their ag program is.
Okay. Gotcha. So when did you get into Oklahoma State then?
I don't remember. I think my interview was probably December or January, so it was probably around when I started that Creel job
Okay.
was when I got the position, but the start date for it wasn't until the fall semester 2023.
Okay.
And so I didn't come out to Oklahoma till like July or August of 2023.
Okay. And so I'm assuming since you're finishing it up, it's a 2-year program?
Yeah, it's about a 2 year program, just kind of depending on how quickly, less so the coursework. The coursework's pretty easy to complete for my master's. It's only like 30 credit hours total.
Oh, wow.
Because most of your work is dedicated
Oh,
to the thesis
mm-hmm.
and kind of doing that research. So your timeline just kind of comes down to how quickly can you get that research done and get the data that you need, get the paper written.
Okay. And is it like Twelve's in her grad program, but I don't actually know. She's not at that point where she's doing a thesis or anything yet. So I'm
Mhm.
curious, do you pick the topic of your thesis or is it kind of given to you? Like, how does that process work?
So it kind of depends on like what position you're in. I was hired as a research assistant, and
Okay.
so kind of the research project that I was doing was predetermined as my job, and more than likely my thesis is going to be pretty closely tied to that. There's another graduate assistant under my advisor, under the professor that I work for, who is a TA, so he's just a graduate teaching assistant. And so he just kind of had free will to pick what his thesis was going to be on. The guy that's working here right now is working with the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, ODWC, and he just last week actually put a bunch of brush piles in 3 different reservoirs around us and is going to be doing some kind of just angling surveys and um, seeing how different sizes of brush piles affect how many fish kind of aggregate around those brush piles and some stuff with that. But the last teaching assistant before him actually did his graduate research in Costa Rica. So
Oh, wow.
he was able to secure funding on his own for that project and kind of pursue a passion that he had down there. And so as a TA, you have a lot more flexibility on deciding what that thesis is going to be.
Mm.
And there's actually some natural resource programs around the country that don't require a thesis.
Oh,
A lot of times those are designed for like a working professional. If you have a fisheries biologist or wildlife biologist or something that doesn't have a master's degree but would benefit from that in their career and the agency wants them to have it, they might do a non-thesis master's degree that they can complete fairly
mm.
quickly and have a master's degree. But having the thesis kind of gives you a leg up in some job applications and just in a career search.
Okay. Um, so what exactly is your thesis? I think you mentioned it at the beginning. I just don't know the exact details of what it is.
Yeah, so basically my thesis is on using hydroacoustics, so basically just a scientific grade sonar system
Hmm.
to estimate shad populations, so a forage fish population here in the southeast. Um, and ideally, we want to be able to use that sonar system to identify what a school of fish that we see in the lake is composed of. So my thesis is basically, can we differentiate a school of the bait fish from a school of, say, crappie,
Hmm.
just using the sonar without having to put out any extra nets or do any of that extra work.
Okay. What have you found so far?
At this point, it's mostly just that almost all of the schools that we encounter in a lake are shad. Um, we haven't gotten to delve too far into the data processing yet to see if there's differentiatable kind of characteristics of those schools. And kind of the problem that we've run into is we haven't found enough schools of things that aren't shad.
Hmm.
We don't have a good statistical comparison there. So even if they look fairly unique, we can't say for certain that they are in fact unique because it could kind of just be a glitch based on a low sample size. Um, but this is after me being on the water for days,
Yeah.
weeks, probably that I've spent sampling. So
Okay. Um, I guess how would you be able, ideally, how would you be able to differentiate from one school of fish versus another?
yeah, so I mean, this gets really into the weeds of hydroacoustics and some very technical stuff, but basically, um, the easy way to differentiate them would be if you go over a school of fish and on your screen, the schools just look different.
Uh-huh.
They, okay, we can see that schools of shad are generally like only a couple feet tall and a couple feet wide, but when we run into a school of crappie, they're 10 feet tall and only a foot wide or something, where if there was some schooling behavior that affected the shape of the school in a very standardized way, that would be the easy way to differentiate between schools of different species. The more technical way, um, when you send out a sound pulse into the water, um, the specific transducer that we're using can have that single sound pulse be a range of frequencies. So on the low end, it can be 160 kilohertz, and it kind of evenly goes from that 160 kilohertz to a 260 kilohertz sound wave.
Hmm.
And the theory is that as those different frequencies interact with an object in the water, so a fish, um, different frequencies will respond differently to different shaped objects, different species of fish, ideally.
Hmm.
So ideally, in our kind of post processing of that data, we'd be able to see, say, okay, maybe shad have a spike where the echo from 220 kilohertz is louder than it
Hmm.
normally is, or when it's a school of crappie, the echo coming from a 180 kilohertz kind of frequency is way quieter than it usually is. So we'd be looking for some of those characteristics just kind of in the sound wave.
Okay. And I I don't know anything about this, but so
You're,
when you send out this wavelength, do the fish, can it affect the fish in some way? Like, can they react to it? And so that could be a factor too.
so there are a few species of fish that can hear some of the frequencies that we're
Oh
using
wow.
because it's a sound wave. So
Hmm.
um, theoretically, so I mean, just kind of like hearing for us, there's specific frequencies that we can hear, but if you get too high or too low, we can't hear it.
Hmm.
There's a few species of fish that can hear the range of frequencies that we're using, but it's very specific groups of fish, and we don't have any in our reservoirs
Okay.
because we're using a very high frequency sound pulse.
Okay. Uh And then are you okay, so you mentioned reservoirs. Are you limited to a specific set of reservoirs or can you like kind of pick and choose them or how does that process work?
Yeah, so we're kind of interested in being able to apply this kind of a system to basically any reservoir that you could effectively complete the sampling in.
Hmm.
Um, the goal for my thesis and everything is to have a publication by the end that would let kind of fisheries managers around the country know that this tool exists and it could be useful for you.
Hmm.
Um, for my research, though, we've been a little bit limited on where we can gather data because I needed to verify what the schools of fish were actually composed of.
Okay.
And the best way that we found to do that was to tow an underwater camera along behind the boat as we were collecting the data. And because we were using a camera, we had sort of the limits on we had to be in reservoirs that had clear enough water that we could actually see
See
where we were
yeah.
distance. Because plenty of the reservoirs in this part of the country have a foot or less of visibility, which would not work very well to use a camera.
Unless you smack the fish in the face with
Yeah,
it.
you have to run right into the fish. And even
Gotcha.
with some of the lakes we were sampling that had a good 6 to 8 feet of visibility, we still had to get pretty close to the fish to see them. So
Okay. So how many reservoirs are you looking at then?
let's see. So I've collected data on, so I've been collecting data in Oklahoma and Arkansas because my grant is funded through the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission.
Okay.
And so I've sampled 3 lakes in Arkansas, and I think I'm up to 3 lakes in Oklahoma that I've sampled as well.
Okay. Are you gonna grow that at all, or are you just gonna keep it to those ones?
Yeah, and because of some of the struggle that we've had in finding things that aren't shad, we're actually going to be doing some kind of experiments with a big net pen that we've
Okay.
created here. So we're gonna, I mean, ideally this week I'm going and putting that net pen out in one of our nearby reservoirs, and we're gonna put a bunch of fish in that and use that as sort of our proxy for schools so that we can get some meaningful data off of it.
So when you say a net pen, I'm thinking like a fenced-in area for cows. I'm thinking something kind of like a corral almost. Is that kind of the similar concept, but for
Yeah,
fish?
similar concept. Yeah, I mean, we basically we've made like a 20-foot tall cylinder,
Okay.
just some mesh, and closed on the bottom, open on the top so that we can put fish in it and we'll know exactly what fish are inside of that net enclosure, to be able to get data off of them without some other random fish coming in, kind of interfering. And it lets us kind of gather data in a known area too.
Okay. So are you actively putting fish in, or are they like swimming in and then get stuck somehow?
So this one will actively be putting fish in.
Okay.
We have ideally we'll get fish using an electrofisher, but both of the electrofishers that our lab has currently are broken.
Oh,
The generators are kind of kaput at the moment, so we're working on fixing generators. And then once those are up, we can use electrofishing. But since one of the species I'm interested in is crappie, we'll likely recruit some other people from the university, just
mm-hmm.
kind of whoever we can, to go out to the lake and catch as many crappie as we can using rod and reel
Oh
and
wow.
in the net pen in the net enclosure.
Okay. The electric one, what is that one? How is that different than the one you've made?
So electrofishing is a tool that a lot of state agencies use, a lot of just kind of fisheries managers use. Um, you have these probes that you put in the water and you run, I don't remember how many volts you run through it or anything, but you run a significant amount of electricity through the water, and that will actually stun the fish. And then you have a couple people up the front of the boat with nets, and you scoop up the stunned fish and throw them in a live well on the boat. After 30 seconds or a minute, depending on how hard you hit the fish. Um, they'll revive and just be swimming around like normal again. And you can measure them, you can kind of do whatever you need to with them. And that's just kind of a tool that a lot of people use, especially for sampling largemouth bass,
Hmm.
because they're frequently just in shallow areas. And so with electrofishing, you can kind of drive over those, see how many fish you get per amount of time that you spend electrofishing, and use that to kind of estimate populations. You can gather information on what the size structure is of fish in a lake. And for me, it's just a useful tool on catching fish to use for other things.
Okay, I remember you telling me about this one time, and I was like, "Oh, that would be sweet to go fishing with you with that, because then it would just be so easy. You just shock them and they float back right to the top." So,
It's pretty fun.
are you? I guess I assume it's so the probes or whatever. Are they on the boat, or is it something you're holding and then putting in the water?
Yeah, so when you're using it on a boat, the stuff is just kind of attached to the boat.
Oh, okay.
You have it looks like I don't know, a little like spider web of kind of cables that hang off the front of the boat. Those
Mm-hmm.
are the water and those have I don't know, the positive charge or something on them. And then the hull of the boat, because usually you use an aluminum boat for this, kind of completes that circuit. And so the water is the kind of intermediate between those. But they actually make electrofishing equipment that runs off of a backpack,
Oh wow.
and that kind of thing is used a lot in like stream sampling. So if you want to go sample the creek or the stream that you're interested in, you go put that backpack on, and you have a pole that you kind of carry around. And you kind of swipe through the water with it,
Mm-hmm.
put the current into the water that way.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Maybe I'll have to think about buying one of those in the future.
They're
Increase the chances of catching a fish.
I don't know how expensive they are, but
I can
many thousands
imagine.
of dollars is the assumption I would be under.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So once you finish, what's the plan after that? Where are you planning? Is there like specific places you're planning to go, like Montana or anything like that? Like, where do you want to, I guess, go from after you graduate?
Yeah, since we just have family out west in Montana and Utah, we want to get back out that direction. So I'm looking for fish biologists or kind of high-level fisheries technician jobs in Montana, Utah, Wyoming, Nevada, Washington,
Mm-hmm.
Idaho, just kind of any of the states in kind of that area.
Gotcha. Yeah, Montana would be sweet. It's super pretty out there. Joelle
It,
would love to live there, but I tell her it's way too expensive to try and buy tons of land.
it's really expensive there right now. I don't know. You can maybe find places in Montana that are more affordable, but it tends to be not the mountainous part of Montana that everyone pictures when they hear Montana. It tends to be
Yeah,
that eastern side of Montana that's just kind of
ugly.
flat and wheat fields and beautiful in a different way.
Yeah, that's true. My like thing that I like to do for fun now for some reason is I like to look at land in different states.
Um,
Um, and so I've looked at like Wyoming, Idaho, well, not really Utah, Montana. Anyways, I've looked around and yeah, there's like some places out west. There's like, oh, this is so cheap, like 100 grand. Like that's not bad. And then you look at it, you're like, oh, that's why it's just like barren.
it's desert or
Yeah, it
USA.
sucks, but yeah, I was talking with somebody, I don't remember who, but somebody said probably the reason Montana and like a lot of the western states are filling up is because of Yellowstone, because of all the TV show. It's like everybody's like, "Oh, it's so beautiful. I have to live out there now." So,
Yeah, I think some combination of Yellowstone. The other thing I see a lot of people blaming for all this movement of people to the west is jobs being able to go remote after COVID.
um, that's true too,
Where
yeah.
California is going to be the constant example here, but people from California with their high-paying tech jobs who don't have to now live in California can go live somewhere
Somewhere.
beautiful and use their high-paying job to buy a bunch of land and stuff.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. The whole COVID kind of screwing people. Well, people who like have lived in the West their whole life kind of screwing them over with that.
Yeah, that's knowing, I mean, my wife being from Montana, her whole family being there, I constantly hear the struggle of Bozeman's the example I hear a lot of,
Mm.
um, where Bozeman, Montana used to be just kind of your normal mountain town, but
Hmm.
has now become this center for a lot of people to move to because it's a beautiful, gorgeous area. But because everyone has moved there, housing has skyrocketed in price. People who grew up in Bozeman now a lot of times can't afford to live in Bozeman anymore, and so are forced to move other places.
Yeah, that part sucks because you have like even generational farms or something, they just can't afford it anymore because all these people with these high-paying jobs just inflate the housing market. And yeah, no, it definitely sucks. But I mean, I guess I understand it. It is a beautiful part of the country, so.
It is. I think we'd be much more inclined to kind of move to this part of the country if our family had any sort of, I mean, we're close to this part of the country at all because it's
Hmm.
been great living in Oklahoma and paying. I mean, we live in like a two-bedroom, two-bath house condo thing that's less than what a lot of our friends in Utah are paying for basement apartments that have like one bed, one bath.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's ups and downs to it. I mean, you once you start getting more out there, you do lose the nice mountain views and stuff like that. I mean, the fishing can be great because there's so much water, so
The summers also become pretty unbearable in our part of the country, but
oh, is it pretty humid there?
it's pretty humid, at least compared to what we know in Utah or Montana. But I think some of the summer has gotten to 100 plus easy with pretty high humidity. And we made the mistake right after we moved here of going camping in
Oh,
late July or early August.
oh yeah.
And I think it was like midnight and checking temperature, it was still like 90 plus degrees.
Uh,
We did not sleep that night.
yeah, no, yeah, no. The humidity is, yeah, it can be. AC is very useful in humidity and making sure it's an enclosed facility. Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, I like the West. I would not want to live in Utah. I've looked at like some places in Wyoming and stuff because I think Wyoming would be, well, I'm a little hesitant with Wyoming. There's very few parts of Wyoming that I'm like, okay, I would like be okay living here because most of it's pretty barren.
Yeah,
But
there's a lot of Wyoming that's just kind of empty.
have you ever been up to the Wind Rivers at all?
I haven't spent any meaningful time up there. I may have driven through once or twice just growing up, and my family would drive all over the place and go and
Yeah.
see and travel and stuff, but I don't think I've ever like done any fishing or anything there.
Yeah, you should if Kayla likes backpacking, maybe you guys should go do that sometime because my dad and I went out when I got off my mission, we went out and did like a week there just backpacking.
Okay.
And you can get up. There's some lakes on top of those mountains. And I mean, I don't remember. I think it was some form of rainbow trout or something like that up there. Some guy like hiked them up there. And then they've just grown and spawned really well up there.
Yeah.
Anyways, I mean, once you've been hiking for a few days and you could literally probably throw your dirty sock out there and catch these just, and you cook them right next to the lake. It was so good. But I
Wow.
guess there's a bunch of lakes like that around up there. So if you were wanting to see some really pretty country and then also do some like fishing and backpacking, it's a good place.
Yeah, a lot of those kind of trips are on my bucket list because I think even the high Uintas in Utah have a lot of those same kind of characteristics, and you can just go and catch as many fish as you can. I mean, as many fish as you have time for because you can catch them on every cast, basically.
Yeah.
You get to some of those high lakes.
Yeah. No, I've heard about the Uintas too. Maybe one day I'll make it out there. But yeah. So yeah, Wind Rivers for sure was a lot of fun. Really pretty country. So I would live around there.
Yeah.
And then my parents said Laramie, but I would have to look into Laramie. But
At
yeah,
least a college town, so it has some of the amenities of being a college town.
true. That is true. So yeah, we'll see where we end up. But um, yeah. So have you been doing a lot of fishing? I mean, since you're doing a thesis, do you have time to actually go fish at all, or is it just you're doing working?
Every once in a while, I can get out and go fishing. I think most recently it was before one of my classes that we were out trying to collect bugs at one of the local lakes that me and one of the other guys in the class took our kayaks and were fly fishing the lake before class started.
Oh, nice.
Just catching some bluegill and stuff for fun. I think my biggest fishing trip that I've done here was I got the chance to go and catch some paddlefish actually off my kayak,
Okay.
um, which was a blast. By far the biggest fish I think I've caught in my life because even just the smaller paddlefish that we were catching were 20, 25 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Um, and the guide who was kind of taking me out and showing me the ropes has even just recently caught 120-pound paddlefish or so. So
Dang. That's a that's a big fish.
it's a massive fish.
Yeah, my dad and I, because I went and I did farrier school down in Arkansas actually.
Oh yeah.
Um, he came down at the end of my farrier school, and he got a guide, and we went and just did some fishing off a boat on one of the rivers. I don't remember when. I'll have to ask him and
Uh,
get back to you on that.
maybe
But
like the White River or something. I think the White River is supposed to be one of the big,
probably it
has
might.
like world-class brown trout or something in it.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds right. But yeah, it was a blast. I mean. It was funny. My dad had a little bit of a problem casting, which I made fun of him for because he says he's used to fly fishing, so he's like, I can't use a reel, or mine was broken was his excuse actually,
Uh,
which was funny because I took his rod and then I casted it and it was totally fine. So I don't know what his problem was, but it was a good time. But yeah, we caught. Oh, I mean, we had a limit of like 12 or something we could catch. I think
okay.
six each or something like that. And yeah, I mean. The guide was super good. I can't remember his name to save my life, but it was, yeah, that was fun. I mean, you just riding up and down the river, just casting off the side of the boat. It was
Yep.
fun.
Yeah, that'd be a blast. That's I'm limited in the amount of fly fishing that I've done out here, but some of the biologists in Arkansas that I've worked with have talked up and down about the fishing there, getting to go fly fishing, catch these massive brown trout. One of the biologists I worked with actually caught it was a 40 or 45-pound striped bass out in one
Wow.
of the lakes over there. That was like his lifetime fish.
Yeah. No, fishing's pretty new to me, especially fly fishing. So I'm starting to get into fly fishing. And so like for Christmas, Joelle got me some waders and stuff. So now I'm like,
There you go.
I'm kind of itching to get out because I'm pretty new to it and I want to get more into it. But um, yeah, I think it'd be fun to go. I want to do some like up on the Great Lakes and stuff and get the
Oh,
like pikes and stuff like that. I
oh
think
yeah,
that would be the northern pike and whatnot. That would be fun. But I don't know. Do you even eat northern pike? I don't even know.
I think you can. I think if I remember right, they have some like Y bones or something that are
Oh,
apparently pain in the butt to deal with, but if you can use whatever technique to get those out, then I think it's supposed to be fairly good eating fish.
oh, yeah, that'd be fun. Well, if my dad and I decide to go, we might go back to Arkansas. And if you're still down there, maybe we'll let you know and you can tag along.
That'd be great. I can spare the time to go out there and do it.
We'll just say it's a research
Yeah.
opportunity.
I'll just, yeah, I think one of the other grad students is doing some project with trout out by,
Yeah,
and so I'll just claim I'm helping him with something.
yeah. Or you just be like, yeah, it's a research opportunity that my uncle actually was able to hook me up with. So I'm just gonna go. It'll be like a day or two. No big deal.
Personal research trip.
Hey, those are important. You gotta have those, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool. So, are you pretty close to completing your I forgot the word. Oh my gosh. Your final project. We'll just go with
Yeah.
that.
Thesis, yeah.
Yeah, thesis.
Yeah, I'm still kind of in the midst of gathering the last of the data that I need, and then it'll be a little bit of a process analyzing the data, and I have to write the thesis, which is going to be a fairly intense process. Even so, my thesis proposal, um, I don't remember how many pages it was, but you write the first couple sections of a scientific paper, and that's your thesis proposal.
Hmm.
I think me and my major advisor went back and forth 6 or 7 times with like rough drafts
Okay.
before we called it good and sent the thesis proposal to my full committee, and then they had all of their edits on it. So even just the proposal was a good 7, 8 drafts to get
Oh
it to kind
wow.
of final form. And I can only assume the thesis is going to be at least that.
Yeah. Yeah. I I will not be going to grad school. I cannot. That's ag business degree sounds good to me. So 4-year program sounds great. We'll just call it good after that. Sweet. How long does Kayla have left of her schooling? Or is she doing just like
So yeah, she's actually going to finish, I think officially finish before I do
okay.
somehow. She started after me, but the program that she's doing, and she found out just to kind of get the general degree. Uh,
Hmm.
she has a couple more classes that she needs to take in the summer, and then she'll be finished, I think, by July.
Okay.
And it's just kind of a general human development and family sciences degree. I don't remember what kind of the emphasis is in it, but
Okay.
uh,
And then
she's
does
being done too.
okay. And then does she have to, because I know for Joelle, she has to do like hours of
Mm.
like certain amount watched hours or something for therapy stuff. Does she have to do that too, I assume?
So yeah, if she was doing the therapy, she would.
Oh,
She's
okay.
kind of moving out of doing therapy because she's kind of found out that it's just not of interest to her.
Okay.
So I think her plan afterwards is to do something in kind of hospital administration kind of stuff, or just other public health, mental health agency kind of work.
Okay. Interesting. Well, good for her. Exciting for both
Yeah,
of you because yeah, your guys are almost done.
we're super stoked to almost be done with graduate school and to check school off of the list of things we're doing.
Yeah. Well, then you're gonna have so much free time. You're gonna be like, I don't know what to do with myself.
That's the hope.
More
Getting
fishing.
introduced.
Yeah. You'll get more fishing in then, and then yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah, so have you heard back about any jobs or anything from where you've applied at all?
So most of the jobs I've applied for so far have just gotten back to me as like we're not considering you further for this position. Um,
Okay.
Part of that is likely at the moment I can't accept a position that's starting before August or so.
Yeah.
So it's still a long ways out for me to actually be getting a job. But I've done one job interview with Montana for an aquatic invasive species supervisor position.
Okay.
And then I have a job interview coming up with Nevada, their game and fish department, for a fish biologist job working with a lot of native trout species there. So
Oh,
we're hoping that one goes well because it looks like a really fun, really interesting job.
yeah. You'll just be stuck in Nevada.
Yep, we'll be in Elko if we get that job, which
Elko. I think one of my wife's friends is from there, so that's
uh,
like yeah, that's actually super funny. I'll have to ask her, let you know. But that'd be interesting. Elko, that
yeah,
sounds familiar.
it looks like a good enough place to start out at. The position isn't like a permanent, I mean, it's a permanent position where I wouldn't be just working seasonally, but it's probably a position that I'd fairly quickly move up from.
Hmm.
And it's about perfect position for us where it's only a few hours from my parents and within a day's drive of her parents. So,
Yeah, that's not too bad. Um, I guess my only other question that I have is if somebody were wanting to get in, what would be your to like this field of work, what would be your recommendations of do's and don'ts to getting into it, I guess?
Yeah, I think it all kind of depends on what you want to do. And so I think a big part of it is just kind of as quickly as you can going out and getting experience, whether that be volunteer experience or job experience with a seasonal job for a state game agency or something. If you're interested in doing fish, then find some job that's connected to fish and do some work in that and see both in talking to biologists and in doing some of the work if that interests you. And the same goes if you're interested in wildlife or something, get a job that's connected to that to kind of get your feet wet a little bit and see if it's what you want to do. Um, the nice thing is any biologist is happy to kind of talk to you about what they do, give you some advice. So even if you just kind of walk into your local Division of Wildlife office and say, ask to talk to someone, someone will be happy to talk to you and kind of tell you what's going on in your local area.
Mm,
Um, and I've actually done that for some of my recent jobs is just kind of show up and try and talk to some people to kind of find out what the process might be like there. And the volunteer opportunities are always abundant. If you just get in touch with a biologist, they'll be happy to let you know when they have sampling that they're doing that they need extra hands on, or just other ways you can get involved with them. And then schooling's another big one. A lot of the higher level jobs in kind of the wildlife career field are going to either explicitly require a bachelor's degree or you're pretty much not going to get it unless you have a bachelor's degree.
hmm
And many now are, um, many of the higher level positions are going to kind of expect a master's degree. So education is going to be a part of that. But there's definitely opportunities that are not going to require a ton of education. I know one job that interested me for a long time was the a game warden job,
hmm
as opposed to a biologist that has to do a fair bit of office work, whether that's writing grants or analyzing data, writing stuff to send out to the public. The officers just get to kind of be out and do all the fun stuff,
mm
and they generally get to kind of help out with fisheries, with wildlife, and get to be very hands on with that. And in a lot of cases, that just requires a degree, an undergraduate degree that's related in some way to wildlife. So that can be a wildlife specific degree or a biology degree or something along those lines.
Okay.
And so just kind of getting out and getting involved in the field, I think, lets you kind of find where your specific interests are. And if you can then talk to someone who's in the job you want to be in, they'll kind of talk to you and tell you what the specific path might be to get there.
Okay. So it really just sounds like just trying to talk to people and asking questions and just get out there and start doing it. And then if you like
Yep.
it, it'll be then start getting the education, figure it out. And if you don't, well, at least you know you don't.
Yep. And I think I've discovered that my love and passion for the outdoors, I love being out fishing, out camping, and doing all this stuff. All of that fit very well into the fisheries biology job that I want to do, where it's a decent balance for me of office work, especially during the winter, but also still getting to go out and not always be stuck in the office at a cubicle.
hmm
Um, and so, yeah, just depending on what your lifestyle interests are for in a job will kind of dictate whether the job is right for you or not. And some of that is pay too, where a lot of the natural resources fields don't pay super well,
Yeah, that's true.
especially at a state agency. If you work for the private sector, you'll make a little bit more too.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to know if I ever, I guess, decide to go back to school. But, well, thank you so much, Caden, for coming and talking to me about your favorite topic of fish. Um, we'll have to sometime figure out some fishing trip or something with like my dad and us. We'll have to, because I mean, if you're up in Montana, we might want to come do some fly fishing up there or something. So we'll have to let you know because that would be fun. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on and talking with me, and uh, I guess I'll let you get back to your school because you got a lot of stuff to do. So,
Yep. I've got a couple projects coming up that I've got to get moving on. So,
yeah, but hopefully you can get out and get some fishing done too, so that you can have some fun fishing, not just work fishing too.
yep.
So,
Yep. I've got all my rods staring at me right now. I've got yeah.
well, that sounds good. Well, I hope you have a good day. Say hi to Kayla for me, and yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Cool. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for watching or listening to this show. If you're enjoying the show, please like, subscribe, and even share with a friend. And we will see you next time on the Ranch Hand Show, where we'll continue to grow our plans.